Great.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our virtual session here. Really happy to be here with everybody virtually, and unfortunately not in Bogota, one of my favorite places in the world. But here we are. I think we've got a really interesting topic here to try and connect some dots for folks on. And when people think green building, do they necessarily think healthy buildings? And with everything that's in the news today, everything that everybody around the world is going through, the time I've spent greening buildings is now really turned into communicating how best green buildings become healthy buildings, right? And generally speaking, all green buildings should be healthy buildings, but let's walk through and see, generally speaking, how green buildings do align with health and well-being in today's day and age with everything we're dealing with. So I'm going to switch quickly to share my screen off here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so green buildings, healthy buildings. What makes a green building healthy, right? Let's just walk through this, and hopefully everybody gets something out of this today. So as everybody knows, we're dealing with COVID-19 and the impact it's having across the world, but in our daily lives, including not only where we work, but where we live. And today, more than ever, what I'm seeing is folks wanting to understand how a green building matches up from a health and wellness standpoint. Are they really healthy? And so, when I speak to folks, I always ask them to look at kind of the who, the what, the where, and the when. And who's in the building? Who is physically in this building? Who is using this building? How is it being used? How many people are there? What are they physically doing in the building? Is it a hospital? Is it a hotel? Is it a school? Is it a multifamily or a single family? Or is it an office building? Because all of that really changes things, right? Where are they within buildings? Are they just using a single tenant space? Is it the whole building? What's the density within the building? How many people are actually within the building, within the spaces that they're utilizing? And then when are they in the buildings? Are they just in the buildings first shift, second shift, third shift, Monday through Friday? All of that makes a difference. And getting a handle on those basics, is really important as we talk through what makes a green building a healthy building, and just what makes, generally speaking, any building a healthy building, right? So understand the occupancy on these buildings. Again, doesn't matter what type, understand the occupancy, understand who's there. And what has changed? I've done this for 35 years plus, working in operations and maintenance and on the design side. And bottom line is everything has changed. Things that we didn't necessarily talk about, we really are talking about. And it's at the most senior of levels and at the lowest of levels within organizations. Everybody wants to know what it is that makes a healthy building and how best to communicate that. So one of the things that I thought I'd start with and get it out of the way right away is this new technology push and or new practices push, if you will. And first and foremost on top of my list, the thing I get called about most often is increasing outside air, okay? And when you look at a green building, at least anything that's been built as green and certified, maybe to LEED over the last 20 plus years, outside air has always been front and center within that. So, but I hear all too often, I get phone calls all too often saying, I need to increase outside air. That's not easy to do on any level, in nearly any building. And so it's really, really important that folks, if it's been certified in the past, go back to the original math. If it's not been certified, go back to the original math on these buildings. What I mean by that is go back to what the design numbers are. A fan can only move so much air. A duct can only push or allow so much air into the building, and the distribution itself, system itself, can only move the air within the building so much. And it's not as simple as just turn up more outside air. A building has to be balanced inside for outside air coming in and for exhaust air. So those two things are balanced across each other. And so what I tell folks is, let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to understanding how much outside air the building should bring in as designed. Let's make sure that that's what it's doing. And then let's understand what, as far as design, is possible above and beyond that. Let's not just simply say, okay, well, we have a 25 horsepower motor on our outside air fan. Let's put 40 in. Let's put a 40 horsepower in and make it move faster. It does not work that way. Pushing more outside air in without accounting for heating requirements or cooling requirements is only going to cause other problems further and further down the road. And they'll be immediate. You'll see that humidity levels rise, and all of that just creates more problems. So go back to your original design, stay with your original design, and understand what you can do to increase above an original design, and have an engineer look at that for you to make sure that you're doing what can be done without spending a whole lot of money. And again, ventilation rates have been around for a long time. They've not changed drastically over the last 25 years or so. So they're meant to keep a building healthy. The current design for ASHRAE is meant to keep a building healthy, meant to have a good number of air exchanges on a regular basis, depending on that space type. And so, let's not jump in and just start changing things for the sake of changing things. Let's understand what we have today. Another one that I'm hearing a lot about is UV lighting. UV lighting in and of itself has been around for a long time. It's tested and proven, but there are some safety things to be concerned about relative to, where they're placed. They should be inside cabinets, not just put out inside of a room. There should be safety precautions and signage put in place to protect people from being exposed to UV directly. And by no means, don't just go and put a UV lamp inside in the middle of a room and say, okay, we're disinfecting. That's just not appropriate, and candidly is to some degree dangerous. So, and the other thing to remember is there's different types of UV lamps. UVC is the one that should be looked at, should be used, and but again, the key there is understanding what the wavelength is on it, and whether or not those lamps themselves produce any ozone. We do not want to be producing ozone in a building that people are occupied on if we don't have to. It's just going to cause other issues that we're just not ready to handle. So UV lighting, appropriately installed, appropriately sized, inside cabinetry, whether a rooftop unit or a built-up unit, is all appropriate. Cost effective, works well, tried and true. It's been around for some time. Just understand the pitfalls. Bipolar ionization or needle point, they call it. Again, this is a little bit more of a newer technology. I'm actually putting it in a couple of buildings. The owners wanted it in, and they wanted to go the extra mile. I do think there's a time and a place for it. Again, my sense is if you're following the basics on a building, that there isn't a need for this. And that if there is an issue within a building, then it should be looked at. But if you get back to your basics, you understand your outside air, your filtration, your occupancy, and you have all of the other policies and procedures in place, this is probably going too far, too fast with a technology that isn't necessarily proven. ASHRAE hasn't taken a position on it yet, nor has the Center for Disease Control here in the U.S. taken a position on it. So I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll work. It's expensive, but not something that I think, if you're following all of the general practices, is needed. So again, I keep saying back to the basics, right? As property managers, as operators, as owners, one of the things that has really gotten a lot of attention is janitorial, and the increase in frequency of cleaning and the types of cleaning chemicals that are being used, and the communication of that, those policies and procedures. So, signage on restrooms that say when it was last cleaned, cards left on desks saying that the space has been sanitized or has undergone a deeper cleaning, and then use of certified cleaning products. One of the things that I'm starting to see in some of the air quality tests that we've done is more chemicals, and we've generally attributed those back to the cleaning chemicals that are being used. And so, disinfectants, cleaners, all are important in doing what we do day to day to ensure a safe environment. But overuse or not using them accurately as prescribed could very well lead to some really not so good intended consequences. So pay strict attention to the chemicals you're using, and where they should be used, when they should be used, and specifically how they should be used. And again, stick with UL Green Seal and or US EPA certified products if at all possible. Just seeing a label that says it's a natural product doesn't cut it. So the other thing that's really, really important is increasing the inspections by management, and whether that's janitorial management or building management, increase these inspections so that you know firsthand that what you've increased or what you've adjusted, modified in the cleaning policies and procedures and chemicals is actually happening. I can tell you firsthand in the office building I'm in, yep, here's what we're doing. And you go out and you look at the cleaning cart, and it's none of the stuff that they said that they were going to use. And so, from a management standpoint, check and recheck. The other thing that's really, really important, in my opinion, is getting the feedback from the occupants within the building. Let's be sure that what we've said we're going to do is being done through our inspections, but also let's make sure we're communicating those to our tenants, our occupants, and that they're providing feedback. And that feedback can be easily done by face-to-face walkthroughs, or even a little more sophisticated through some sort of survey sent out to the tenants, so that they are part of the overall planning, and that you're getting the feedback if there's an issue within the building. So another one, back to the basics. And again, I can't reiterate enough how important all of the basics are. And again, when you think green buildings, these are, the janitorial pieces. Green cleaning has been part of green building for as long as green buildings has been around. HVAC and all of these inspections and policies, procedures have been part and parcel of green cleaning or green building certifications forever. Candidly, they're part of just good basic operations of buildings. So one of the things that we're seeing a lot of is outside air dampers or exhaust systems not syncing with each other. So outside air dampers aren't operating properly, and or exhaust fans, toilet exhaust fans, electrical room exhaust fans are not operating. And those two have to work in tandem to be effective. Another thing that's really, really important today is, I'm sure everybody's seen it, you go into the restroom and there's an exhaust fan and it's caked with dirt. If it's caked with dirt, it's caked with other stuff, bacteria, viruses and such. So let's make sure that we get those things cleaned. If we can, reach up into the exhaust duct a little bit safely and get those cleaned, and keep them clean. You know, people are going to see that, and you know, you just don't want anything that looks unsanitary at this point. So those exhaust fans, make sure that they're working, and let's make sure that they're clean. Understand again the design numbers on your ventilation systems before you make any changes. Just don't change anything without understanding specifically how that building was designed and how the outside air is brought in and how the exhaust is taken out. Know your filters. What is the best you can put in relative to a MERV rating on your building, which is minimum efficiency reporting value, okay? The higher the MERV rating, the higher the efficiency. Generally, the higher the MERV rating, the higher the pressure drop. And I don't mean to get technical, but it's important. The higher that pressure drop is, that means the harder the fan has to work, the more energy that's used. And again, fans and motors are fixed to deliver a set performance. So once you put a higher efficiency filter in than the system can tolerate, you're going to make that motor work too hard potentially and cause a whole set of other problems. Maybe even not be able to bring in the amount of outside air. So look at or have a technician look intently at how much pressure drop you can put in place relative to a filter, and then make a decision as to whether or not a higher efficiency filter, 11, 13. The general filters that I see in place are MERV 8. Those are bird and leaf catchers. Don't get me wrong, they're effective at doing what they do, but the higher the efficiency, the better you're going to be at trapping the particulate matter that makes a difference. Know when to change, okay? You know, some folks look at filters and say, okay, well, they're good for 3 months or 6 months. Ask your filter representative to tell you how often these should be changed out. And, you know, if you can, actually take a pressure reading on the front side and the back side of that filter so you can tell when it needs to be changed. You can't always tell. They look dirty, but you can't always tell that they're fully loaded. So take a quick look, or do a little bit more digging, talk to your filter representative to figure out how best and when to change those things. And then the other thing that I'm telling folks, if you're changing filters, anybody that is changing filters, whether it's an in-house maintenance person, a janitorial person, or a service technician from an outside organization, have them gear up in full PPE for their safety and for the safety of the people in the building. And then any filters that are taken out should be bagged. Any old filters should be bagged. You don't want to be dragging those filters that are loaded with, you take a guess as to what's in them, right? If they're dirty, there's probably things in there we just don't want right now being just tracked through a building. So have them bag those filters before they bring them in, and have them protect themselves and the other people as they're taking them either through the buildings to the trash can or not. They can be disposed of in the garbage. There's no problem with that, but have them bag them first. And then the other thing is, you know, and it's all too often forgotten, is in every place in the world, there's air conditioning. Air conditioning requires condensate drain pans, and all too often those condensate drain pans are not cleaned. And you know, my recommendation always, even though it costs a little bit of money, is to use a biocide. The person that is handling your cooling tower treatment can effectively provide you with those biocide tablets to put in. Do not use chlorine. Do not go out and buy just a chlorine tablet that you would put in your pool. I've seen that done too. Talk to your chemical treatment folks, your filter folks, and find out what condensate pan tablets can be used, and make sure that there's enough of them given the size of your coils. That'll keep your coils or your condensate pans clean, and that slime from building up in them and potentially moving things into the airstream. Another thing that's really, really important is verify your runtimes against your occupancy. There's no need to be running a building or a floor, depending on how you can turn things off, that isn't occupied. So really, really dig deep into the occupancy. If it's a space that's lightly occupied, potentially it's have them call if they're coming in to have the air conditioning turned on, or when they get there to have the air conditioning turned on, so that you're not running air conditioning just for the sake of running air conditioning at this point. Another thing that I tell folks, close your blinds, keep that heat outside, keep the cooling inside. While they're closed, maybe have janitorial go through and spend a little bit of time and clean them, because they have a tendency to attract a lot of dust, and that dust, as everybody knows, generally has other things in it. So close the blinds. People that come in can effectively walk up to their window and open those blinds. Another thing that I've really started to ask folks to do, and is to establish a baseline for air quality within the building, for indoor air quality within the building. And what I mean by that is, let's take a representative sample outside and a couple of samples within the building, so that everybody understands today, whether there's people in there or not, but understands today what the CO2 levels, the TVOC levels, total organic or total volatile organic compounds, particulate matter, and then temperature and humidities are. And this is more of a proactive thing. It's not necessary, but it's proactive, so that as people come back into the building, you know that your air handling equipment is clean, the filters are good, the air has been tested, and the test results came back good. If there's an issue going forward, you're able to at least compare against what your baseline was. So shouldn't be an expensive proposition, but just try to do a simple random sampling of air quality within your building, and always do a sample outside, so that you're comparing your outside and your inside, especially on the CO2. If you have high particulate outside, you're going to see higher particulate inside. So, and then plumbing basics, this one I'll run through quickly. Know your building occupancy level. I keep going back to that, but understand who is where. If no or low occupancy, flush the plumbing at least weekly. The last thing you want to do is have somebody come in, make a cup of coffee or take a glass of water out of the dispenser, and the water tastes terrible. And now, guess what? You're going to be reacting to somebody that is saying the water is bad. It may not be bad. It may just taste foul at it because it's been sitting. We've all experienced that. But so, if you've got the staff that can at least, run the taps, maybe flush the coffee makers and or the water dispensers, I highly recommend doing that. If you're able to, if the building is, especially if the building is just sitting, conduct a baseline test, meaning get some water samples out of your system and send them to a lab, have them tested. There's a number of products you can order online, test products that you can order online, that you just take the samples and send them in. So that, again, you understand if there is something in your pipes before somebody questions whether there's something in your pipes. And then fill your floor drains, whether in your bathrooms, your janitorial closets, and or your air handler rooms. There's nothing worse than having a sewage smell coming up and people not knowing where it's coming from. Those dry, if things aren't being used, odds are better than not the drains will dry out. And then if there is a filtration system of any sort on the building, what I'm recommending to folks, if it's not used, if the building is not being used heavily, that the filters be removed temporarily until occupancy gets back up, or that they're changed more often, so that you don't end up with a filter that's just sitting there growing stuff. And then for cooling towers, especially if they're not operating as often as normal and the chemical treatment isn't being injected as often as is typical, it's really, really important that that cooling tower be tested for Legionella. And your chemical treatment folks should readily be able to, should be handling Legionella already for you, but you may have to ask them to come in more often and run that test and make sure that it is written. The last thing you want to do is have a cooling tower going on and off that has potentially Legionella in it. So, and document. So let's jump into a couple of the things that I've seen come out here in the last 6 months that I think really at the end of the day will help folks get their arms around all of the various policies, procedures, and programming to ensure that green buildings are healthy buildings, or even if it's not a green building, that it's a healthy building, right? So one of the programs that's out there, U.S. Green Building Council, the folks that built LEED have a program called ARC, and within ARC, they have developed a re-entry program. So it's for buildings, it can be used on spaces, it can be used on whole portfolios, and it is free to use. You can go to ARC, set up a registration for free, and put a building into it today at no cost. It requires a set list of janitorial policies and procedures. So you can pretty readily work with your janitorial company, input that, and answer the questions. It also requires an occupant engagement program, which includes signage, tenant and occupant surveys. Those are done through the application itself. So you put the people's email addresses in and send it directly to the occupants. What I recommend is that you do this, you try the surveys first with the property management, operations, janitorial teams, so that you can see how they answer the questions, and then remediate before you send it out to the broader audience within the building. Feedback and adjusting programming based on the feedback from the surveys is critical and is part of the occupant engagement program. And then ultimately, after you've gone through the whole program, being able to put out your performance score. So how well, based on all of the policies and procedures, does your building score, and being able to communicate that, right? Within it is the HVAC policies and procedures, much like we've already talked about, including an HVAC inspection of all primary equipment, so rooftop units, built-up air handlers, heat pumps, things like that, outside air units, the filtration, some test and balancing work to ensure outside air is actually matched up with design, and then establishing an IAQ testing protocol that includes a baseline and then regular testing as the building becomes occupied. You obviously don't want to be doing a bunch of testing if the building isn't at least a 50% occupancy level. Those documents, all of the documentation from those various pieces, HVAC, janitorial, and occupant engagement, are then submitted. A score is calculated, and from that you're able to then display the report publicly. You can print it out, or folks can scan a QR code and get a copy of the report, and you're able to display on the door a door cling that says participating in ARC reentry with your score. So this is not a certification program. It's intended to be a guidance document that allows you to score a single building or a group of buildings together, and allows you to raise your score over time. So it's not something you have to be 100% tomorrow, but it allows you to do as much as you can, as quickly as you can, and then additional pieces as the building gets occupied. But again, it's not a certification. There's no formal review of any of the documents that get input or the questions that get answered. So So that's by the U.S. Green Building Council. It's called ARC Reentry Program. And again, it's free to use. Excuse me. The other program that I have gotten a lot of feedback on and have seen a lot of interest in is the Well Building Health and Safety Rating. Everybody, I think, should know that there's the Well version 2 certification. That's the whole building certification, and it's actually running a formal certification, much like LEED. The health and safety rating is specific to health and safety components. And if you look at what we just went through for ARC, it's all of that plus some additional items. So they still want you to have a janitorial policy and procedures, HVAC policy and procedures, occupant engagement and surveys, feedback program. But then they go a little bit further. They want actual IAQ testing more often. So generally it's going to be a once a month type thing where you're going to be testing outside air. They want surface swab testing. So they physically want to swab surfaces for bacteria and or viruses. And in doing that, that helps quantify or verify that your cleaning program, your cleaning protocol, chemicals and such are all indeed working. And so that's a requirement within the health and safety rating program. And then there's a more robust requirement in ARC. There is no requirement to test water. I advise that buildings test water, but there's no requirement for it in ARC. Within the health and safety rating program, there is a requirement to test the building's potable water systems. Those samples get taken and sent off, and the results come back so that you know what's in your building. But and then there's additional requirements for human resources, whether a multi-tenanted building or a single-tenanted building. There's still a requirement to have some engagement by management with the tenants to understand what their policies and procedures are around personal time, counseling services for folks that are dealing with COVID and or illnesses, and then company resources for paid time off and such. So there's a few more things to look at relative to the human resource side that are required within the health and safety program. Unlike ARC, which is free, Well Health and Safety Rating is $4,200. That includes the registration and certification fees. But that also includes all of your review work. It does not include the outside testing for air quality, water, and surface swab testing. So those are additional things that would have to be paid for to complete the Well Health and Safety Rating. And it does require an annual recertification. So you do it now, 12 months from now, you're going to stay in it. You got to recertify. So it's only good for 12 months from the time that you submit and get certified. So again, ARC Health and ARC Reentry is where I'm telling most folks to get started. It's a good way to get your feet wet, to understand what the requirements are, and then depending on the comfort level, I suggest folks then look at the health and safety rating from Well and make a decision as to whether or not that's applicable for them. It is more robust, and it is, in my opinion, a fair bit more of an insurance policy, as folks start coming back into the building. So a number of things that I think are really, really important that we're all, as building owners, operators, managers, designers, really need to start taking a hard look at is some of the basic terminology that's out there, because it is very much becoming front and center. And I'm hearing brokers ask questions. I'm hearing owners, tenants, individual occupants asking, or saying things because they've seen it here or they've read it there. And so it's going to be really important that we as a building industry get behind some of these terms and understand not just what they mean, but how they go up or down, how they're impacted, and what those impacts have within a building. So total volatile organic compounds, TVOCs, you're going to hear that one a lot. And if you think of it this way, it's really the sum of all chemicals that have an ability to be measured. Because there's a lot of chemicals that can't be measured, but the ones that can, those are totaled up, and that gives you a total number, right? And most of these things, oddly enough, are man-made products. And I can all but guarantee you what's going to happen in the short to medium term here is people are going to end up having their own personal IAQ monitors on their desk. They're probably going to have their own personal HEPA filter sitting on their desk at some point, but they're going to get a high reading for TVOCs, and they're going to call management, and management's going to say, okay, let me get somebody in. It's going to be more important for us to understand what TVOCs are, and the fact that somebody's deodorant, somebody's perfume, somebody maybe just had their fingernails done today, their hairspray, maybe their fabric softener, honestly, or maybe maintenance did some painting, or the carpets were cleaned. There's so many different things. Somebody just renovated a tenant suite, and the glue that was used or the paint that was used. So it's going to be really important that folks understand what this means as these new complaints outside of, hey, it's too hot or hey, it's too cold come in, because this is what we'll be dealing with in the next 6 or 12 months as people start coming back to the buildings is, okay, TVOCs are high, right? What are we going to do? And so understanding it and being able to investigate on our own is going to be really key. CO2, which is carbon dioxide, everybody's heard a lot about that. The healthy range within a building is 500 to 1,000. Anything over 1,000, you really have to start investigating. And it's generally going to be one of two things. It's going to be the population is too high, or it's going to be the mechanical equipment is not working, meaning the outside air damper is closed, the fan's not pushing the air into the building, the terminal unit, VAV, or heat pump is not working, the damper's not working, or the control thermostat isn't working, and it's not moving things in the right direction so that the air isn't making it into the space. So it's always going to be population, or it's going to be a mechanical problem. And that, I can all but guarantee you 99% of the time, that's where it's going to sit. So, and again, 500 to 1,000 general reference outside is going to be somewhere in the 450 to 500 parts per million. And so, if somebody's looking at it and saying, well, my CO2 is 700, but outside is 500, yeah, there's people inside. And that's the difference. But 500 to 1,000 is a good place to be. And most all buildings with normal ventilation, that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep the CO2 levels within those readings, or that range. And what most folks should understand is when a building is designed, when an office space is designed, what happens is we work to design design airflow, air changes to a specific room type. Not just it's an office, but it's a conference room, it's an office, it's a break room, it's a meeting room, it's a fitness center, or it's a deli. It's designed for that, and airflows go up or down depending on that type of room, so that you can have a higher number of people in a conference room versus in an office. So again, all of the math, the dots are connected, and so it's just really important to understand that. The other thing, another one, carbon monoxide. Again, carbon monoxide is only going to come from an internal combustion of some sort, whether that's a furnace, a boiler, or a generator, or a gas engine, somebody running their car somewhere. We all know what temperature is. Humidity, I always preach on humidity. Ideal range is 35 to 50. I say 35 to 45. But understand that most no building outside of maybe a hospital and an emergency room or surgical room is designed to do any sort of humidity control. And so as people begin to start monitoring their space within their buildings or checking their space, they're going to see that humidity levels within office buildings especially is going to fall, depending on your climate, as low as 5, 10, 15%. And depending on your climate, maybe 60, 70%, right? So again, it's going to be really important that people understand that our building isn't designed to dehumidify. It's just not, and it's not designed to humidify. If it's a heating environment, it's not designed to add humidity. And so when people start seeing these ranges and they say, I've got a headache, I've got dry sinuses, my eyes hurt, it's bad air quality. No, it's not. It's just that the system's not designed for that. And so understanding that and being able to communicate that is going to be really important. Particulate matter, 2.5 and 10 are the two that we use from a green building standpoint, and that all goes back to filter efficiencies and such. 2.5 is a very small, it's 2.5 microns. 10 is obviously 10 microns, but those are the size of inhalable particulate or inhalable particles. And our filtration system, again, remember, we take air from the outside, we heat it, cool it, we push it into the building, and then we suck it back to the fan. Some of that goes out in exhaust and then is filtered or diluted with new outside air and pushed back. So the whole system itself is circulated, and our filters are intended to catch that particulate. So again, watching that efficiency is really important. That MERV rating is really, really important. Watch for occupants that begin utilizing these personal IAQ meters and or personal filtration units. I can tell you, if you bring a big filter in from home and you put it on your desk, and as a tenant, they may want to start doing that. Property management's going to need to get in front of it. Those are, in all honesty, with the amount of air that is moving within a building, they're just not going to be effective. And so property management teams are going to have to become accustomed to dealing with tenants wanting to do that and explaining why it's just not effective and why it's not needed because of how the building is designed and performs and has been tested. So I think another really, really important thing to start looking at, I'm seeing it already in the different rating systems for green buildings, is start planning if there's any new construction, whether a brand new building or a new build out within your space in your building, so a new tenant improvement, start looking at real-time IAQ metering. It is going to become part of what we do as owners and operators. If a building suite is being changed, start looking at what you can install for IAQ metering. But again, it's really important that everybody agree and understand on the type of meters that they're going to put in place and how that information is going to be communicated back to occupants, back to ownership, because it is a re-education once all of this extra information is put out there. So I highly recommend folks start looking at as buildings get built or buildings get retrofitted, installing real-time air quality metering and having a communications protocol established before tenants move in. So does green equal healthy? I think if you look at, in general, everything over the past 20 years that has been designed into a green building has made those or allowed these green buildings to be better suited to be healthy buildings. Doesn't necessarily mean they are, because design is the best intention, operations is the best practice, right? So if it's designed well, installed well, but it's not maintained, you're back to square one. So it's really, really important that everybody understand that a green building should be very healthy relative to air, outside air intake, as well as filtration, as well as cleaning policies, as well as the materials that were used to build it, and but it all comes back to who's maintaining it at the end of the day. So a green building is, in my opinion, fitted up very much better than a building that's not gone through any sort of greening on its own, because these basic parameters around outside air and efficiency, filtration are all in place. So it is really, in my opinion, a green building is indeed a healthy building, but it all comes back to those basics of operations. Understanding and monitoring as required to promote health and well-being. I think, again, green buildings are better suited to be able to communicate because the information is there. It's been documented, it's been reviewed, and in some cases certified. So I'm able to take any green building that I've touched, that I've certified, and show what the outside air means. I understand it, whereas a non-green building probably doesn't have that information readily available. I think the biggest, if there's one key takeaway here, is understand what your building equals, what that math is, understand your testing and your policies and procedures, and above all, communicate it as often as you possibly can and get feedback from people that are in the building. And then begin to learn and communicate the new terms around outdoor air and testing protocols. You don't have to be an expert, but you should at a minimum understand what these new terminologies are, and be able to, at a high level, communicate comfortably how each of these different things pertains to your building or buildings. So with that, a lot of information, maybe a little bit too technical. I have a tendency to do that. I have probably talked way too fast, but I'm hoping that this sheds a little bit of light on how a green building truly can be, should be, and can be healthy for its occupants, and how engaging with the information on your green building and communicating that back to your occupants, your tenants, your owners should really help people be more comfortable moving back into their buildings, into their spaces, and being part of the green healthy buildings movement, because that's really where I think it's going. I think the health and well-being and the sustainability of buildings are totally interconnected, intertwined, and it's only going to continue and grow from there. So with that, I thank you for your time, and really appreciate you participating, and wish you all the best. Thank you.